Listen to a story about a man named Jed, a poor mountaineer who barely kept his family fed through the hardest of times. Then one day, while he was out shooting at some food to put on the table, a mysterious bubbling crude came bursting up from the ground. Oil, that is black gold, Texas tea. Well, the first thing you know, old Jed is a millionaire. The kinfolk said, "Jed, move away from there," and they told him that California was the place he ought to be. So they loaded up the truck and they moved to Beverly Hills, that is, swimming pools, movie stars, the Beverly Hillbillies. Ellie Mae looked up at the sky and saw something remarkable. She asked what kind of sign it was, describing it as a great big thing, red, white, and blue, and real pretty. The sign said, "Welcome, Hero." This puzzled Jed, and he asked her if she knew who had put it up. She told him it was Ms. Drysdale. Jed found that truly puzzling, so he decided they had best go talk to her. He noted that the sign was a big rascal and quite pretty, just like Ellie Mae had said. He wondered where the fellas were who had put it up. Jethro recognized the sign and wondered where it came from. When he heard Ms. Drysdale had it put up, he asked why. They did not know, but they figured she must think one of them was a hero. Jethro immediately claimed the title for himself. When asked what he had ever done for Ms. Drysdale, he explained that he had saved her valuable French poodle dog. Granny suspected another one of Jethro's great stories and asked him how he saved it. Jethro explained that he was out back that morning and heard the dog whining. He looked through the hedge and saw a sissy-looking fella who had a hold of Ms. Drysdale's poodle and was cutting off all its hair. Jethro told the man to let go of the dog, but the man just looked at him and kept on cutting. Jethro went through the hedge and asked him again, and when the man refused, Jethro grabbed a hold of him and shook the dog loose. The man kept yelling, "Messer, messer," so Jethro told him to go back to his sewer and leave the dog alone. Then the man slapped him. It did not hurt Jethro, but it made him an awful man, so he picked the fella up and chucked him into the swimming pool to cool him off. The man scampered out and took off like a wet jackrabbit, and then Miss Drysdale took up the chase, yelling, "Henri, Henri." Meanwhile, Miss Drysdale was in a state of distress. Ba said she would never be able to get Henri to make another house call, and that he had blacklisted her with every poodle beautician in Beverly Hills. She looked at poor Claude the dog, who had to wear his raincoat, so no one could see that he was only half-clipped. She told the dog to go to Daddy so he could comfort him, but Mr. Drysdale begged her to stop calling him that dog's daddy, calling her heartless and cruel. Ms. Drysdale lamented what a ghastly morning she had experienced. The sign people had not delivered the Welcome Hero banner for the front of their house. Mr. Drysdale told her not to worry because he had a tremendous hero's welcome waiting right at the bank for their nephew. Ms. Drysdale reminded him that Lance Bradford was her nephew, not his. Mr. Drysdale joked that if he could be a father to a dog, he could be an uncle to a hero. He looked at the expenses for the reception: an electric sign for $1,500, bleachers for $600, a band for $400, plus confetti and streamers. He remarked that the astronauts did not have a bigger reception. Ms. Drysdale insisted it was all that Lance deserved, calling him the pride of the Air Force and Jetstream Bradford. Mr. Drysdale agreed, but noted he was spending a bundle. He asked for one little favor. He wanted to invite the Clampetts. Ms. Drysdale refused, but Mr. Drysdale reminded her they were his biggest depositors. Ms. Drysdale believed that would change when Lance took over the bank. Mr. Drysdale clarified that he was making him vice president, but he was not taking over. Ms. Drysdale insisted it was only a question of time because Lance was brilliant and daring, with an intelligence and personality that would bring in staggering accounts. Just then, a secretary interrupted to say the driver had telephoned from the Air Force Base. The hero's plane had landed, and they were on their way. Ms. Drysdale was thrilled and told Claude they must be ready to greet his cousin. She ordered Mr. Drysdale to get into his uniform. He pleaded not to be made to wear the ridiculous outfit, but she insisted it was patriotic and that he should feel honored to portray Uncle Sam. Later, at the bank, Mr. Drysdale called Mr. Clampett and invited his family to the big hero's reception. Jed told the family that Mr. Drysdale was having a big reception for Jethro at the bank and wanted them to come right over. Jethro was excited, believing the bank was making a big thing out of him saving the dog. At the bank, Mr. Drysdale was dressed as Uncle Sam, feeling quite uncomfortable. He urged everyone to come out to the curb as the hero arrived. He told the band to strike up and everyone to wave their flags and cheer. Lieutenant Lance Bradford arrived, and Uncle Sam saluted him, thanking him for his valorous service. He then turned him over to the president of the Commerce Bank. Lance addressed the crowd, saying he joined their ranks not as a hero, but as a fellow employee. He said he was no longer Jetstream Bradford, terror of the skies, but just plain Vice President Bradford. He told them not to look up to him as a hero, but as the boss's nephew. The crowd cheered, calling him a dreamboat and welcoming him to the bank. However, in the excitement, a small mishap occurred where someone was bumped. Jed felt bad about the accident, especially after the young man had flown all the way from Texas for the reception. When they realized the confusion over who the hero was, Mr. Drysdale explained that he thought it was for Jethro rescuing the dog. It was an unqualified fiasco. As Lance began to recover, he asked who the people were. Ellie Mae introduced herself, and Lance, regaining his confidence, called himself Jetstream. He showed off his lightning reflexes and decided to take a look around the bank, claiming his Air Force training allowed him to bounce back quickly. He told them that when you crash a plane, you climb right into another one and take off. He felt as good as new, with nerves of steel and eyes like a hawk. Suddenly, bad news arrived. While everyone was outside for the reception, someone had robbed the bank. Mr. Drysdale was in a panic, trying to explain to the police that all his employees and security guards were out front cheering and carrying balloons instead of guns. Ms. Drysdale arrived, demanding the Clampetts be arrested for trying to kidnap their dog, Claude. She claimed Jethro was dragging the dog away while the rest of the family waited in a getaway truck. Mr. Drysdale told her to stop worrying about the dog because the bank had been robbed. Ms. Drysdale criticized him for not being able to put things into perspective. She turned to Lance, hoping he could restore order. Lance pointed out that having all employees in the street while the bank was robbed was a pretty sloppy way to run a bank. He expressed his disappointment in the entire operation and said he was uptight and wanted to take the company plane up for a spin to unwind. When he found out the bank did not have a plane, he was embarrassed and suggested they buy an executive jet for $500,000. Mr. Drysdale suggested a cheaper idea, taking a dog for a walk. Later, Lance went over to the Clampett estate to invite Ellie Mae to a party that his Aunt Margaret was giving for her hero. Jethro was still confused, wondering if he should get ready for the party too. Lance met Jed and Granny. He told them that in the Air Force, they live in fame and go down in flames. Jethro called his nephew an ace, mentioning he had been in many dogfights. When asked about his latest tangle, Lance clarified it was with a French poodle. Granny, acting as a doctor, wanted to check on Lance, but he insisted he was fine. Jed and Granny left the young people to get acquainted. Ellie Mae and Lance sat by the pool. Lance told her about a terrifying experience flying at 20,000 feet through a storm, where the plane was tossing around like a kite. He admitted that if the stewardess hadn't given him a sedative, he never would have made it. Ms. Drysdale arrived and was furious to see Lance with Ellie Mae. She accused the Clampetts of trying to snare her nephew. She called Ellie Mae a blonde vixen and a low-bred hussy. Jed tried to defend his daughter, but Ms. Drysdale was inconsolable. She warned them to stay away from her precious boy. Despite the tension, the spirit of the day remained one of unexpected adventures and the peculiar, humorous clashing of two very different worlds in the heart of Beverly Hills. Everyone learned that whether one is a mountaineer or a jet pilot, life is full of surprises and family, no matter how eccentric, is what truly matters in the end.